Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. This is episode number 324. We're going to try a little bit different format. I want to tinker around with some things and see how it goes, and well, we'll just fly with it. If you don't like it, let me know out there. But
I don't like it.
we'll
I waited as long as I could.
yeah. We'll see how this goes. I'm tinkering around, just trying to see what I can do. All right. Anyway, the well, I meant to say, I was going to say we were coming from and my host is Sam Donner by my host is Brian McNichol.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah. So I was going to say that we're coming from our studios in the Great Northwest because it's been wet enough lately that I feel like I'm living in the Great Northwest.
I hear you. It's been like it is there. Actually, Washington, D.C. gets as much rain as Seattle. And we have cloud cover more days out of the year than Seattle. Like, people don't know that, but it's true. Like, we're the second cloudiest weather station in the country. And the only one that's ahead of us is State College, Pennsylvania. So, and man, you can see why. Like, it has been, I don't know, I was thinking about this earlier because I was trying to tell someone about it. 6 weeks, basically, of like, there's a little bit of sunshine, like it's right outside my window now, the sun is shining. But I mean, the sunshine in the last 6 weeks can be calculated in hours, right? It probably doesn't take much more than two hands to count it, right? I mean, it's just endless clouds, rain. All the windows in my house are all fogged up from the humidity. I went out running this morning, just like, it's just total. I was sweaty the first 5 minutes of it.
Oh, I want video of you running.
Oh yeah, I'm out there, man.
Good. That's good because I have this routine of going to the gym in the morning, but the other part of it is I want to do like a walk around the neighborhood in the afternoon or evening, maybe just before or just after dinner time. But this weather's gotten in the way, and if it's too humid, I'm just like I'm probably not going to go very long. But this weather has just kind of put the kibosh on all of that for the most part. So I think it's getting hotter and more humid here in the next few days.
Yeah, it's hard to golf. You can't even golf hardly because it's been raining. You can't see much rain.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you mentioned, I mean, I think you talked last week about Oakmont, right? And
yeah,
they had a pretty tough go.
Yeah, they had a tough go with the rain, and then of course, there's the golfer from Shreveport named Sam Burns was tied for the lead, and he hits the ball, and it's like right by a big puddle of water. And when he swings, you would see, his practice swings, you would see this gush of water come up, right? So the rules of golf say if you have what they call casual water, now they call it, they've redefined it, and they've tried to specify exactly what it is. But it's water that's that's on the course only because it rained that day, right? So it's not like you have lakes on golf courses, right? Ponds or whatever. This doesn't help you with ponds, but like water puddles that wouldn't have been there except for it rained that very day, right? So he's by a puddle and he's swinging and made a big splash every time. So he asked the USGA rules officials if he could move the ball, right? And the one said no, and he asked for a second opinion, and the second one said no. So he had to hit it, and his hit went way into the rough, and the rough was that deep, man. Like 7-8 inch deep rough. Especially by Sunday, they haven't mowed it, and it's been raining, and all that stuff. And so then he was in the rough. So he made a triple bogey on that hole, and he ended up, that was it for him. He collapsed. He didn't come back. And, you had a pretty unlikely winner of the U.S. Open as a result. So, it really hurt him, but it really like changed the way that competition unfolds. Now, they all got to play in the weather, and, if you don't want to have a hazard, don't hit your ball by the hazard, right? But that was a tough break for him. And but to his credit, he got a lot of credit for, that he was asked in the interview about it, and he said, well, I thought it was, it qualified for this relief, and I asked, and they said no, and I wasn't sure. I kept looking at it, and I decided to ask someone else, and he said no, and that's the way it goes, right? You got to play it like they say. And then, he got a lot of credit for just being straight up and saying, not complaining, just accepting the rule.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, because I listened to the PTI, Pardon the Interruption, podcast, and so Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon, I think they were in agreement the other day that, he kind of got he really kind of got the short end of the stick, on that, in their opinion, and so credit Burns for saying, not trying to make excuses for this. I mean, they ruled against him, and he went with the flow, and but they were convinced that Burns would have won that tournament had it not been for that there was that episode. So
yeah, could well be.
Yeah, but we will never know. That's right. That's the way sports goes, right?
Yeah, it really does. And that's a hard mountain to get to the top of, and you hope that he gets to the top.
Yeah, I mean, you're close. It's just just slight turn, and all of a sudden, this big prize, that you had within your grasp slips away, and stuff. But apparently, I guess it was quite the tournament, because both Wilbon and Kornheiser, everybody said they were pretty much glued to watching just about every swing.
It really was. And there's another Shreveport story there too. They had a guy named Phil Barbary who had grown up playing with Sam Burns, like on the Shreveport courses. And he made the cut. They had to come back on Saturday morning and finish his round because of rain delays. And he made the cut by making a putt on 18. His caddy is his wife, because he plays most of his time on the tours that play in like Canada and Mexico and so forth. And the only way she'd be able to stay with him is to be there as part of the deal. And he ended up making $41,000 for finishing tied for 66th, which is the largest payday he'd ever had. But he had to make a putt to qualify, to make the cut. And he makes the putt, and the wife comes up and gives him a big hug. Viral moment. Got discussed, and he had a big following after that. And the last hole he's on, he comes out in a Pirates jersey, because they're in Pittsburgh.
Right.
And he got it from his friend Paul Skeens, who is one of the best pitchers in baseball.
Right.
Went to LSU together. And, he gave him this shirt, and so he wore it on the 18th hole at Oakmont, and, fans went nuts. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. He ended up being a really good story for a E66,
Yeah. All right. Well, wow. That's a nice story there to have in there. All right. Time for the news. So we got a few topics I want to discuss for the next half hour or so, starting with what's going on between Israel, Iran, and the U.S. Israel, is serious. I mean, they've been hitting Iran. They've been, they've really kind of pinned them back on their heels here. They've gone after these targets. It's been, kind of spectacular in a lot of ways. President Trump has been pretty much in their corner. So, give me your take on what's going on over there.
Well, Israel has decided that Iran is close enough to being able to make a nuclear bomb that if they're going to stop it, they have to stop it now. So, they've gone about it in a number of ways. One of them is, they killed everyone who would have showed up to respond to their attacks, right? The other people who would have planned the Iranian military intelligence, whatever response, that they assassinated them, basically. So they've taken out almost all their nuclear scientists, destroyed as much of their nuclear capability as they can. They can't quite get it all. They say they need bunker buster bombs that only the U.S. has. So, that's the decision for Trump. Is he going to help them finish this off? It's dicey for him, because if he doesn't, the mullahs survive, right? Then all this has happened for nothing, and Iran is mad, right? But if he does, you're removing one of the great bad actors from the world stage. So it's a real conundrum for Trump, and it's most of the possible outcomes could actually be pretty good for us.
Yeah, and Iran has been. I mean, they're a serial violator of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, right? I mean,
Right.
they've just kind of thumbed their nose at this. So
And JETPOA, the agreement that was the West signed with them to keep them from getting nukes. I guess it was signed during the Obama administration, and they've never really followed it, and they are pretty close to having what they need to make nuclear weapons. In fact, I think part of the deal is the Iranians want to make more than one. They don't want to just drop one and they're done. They want to, because you remember the goal here, they're not trying to conquer Israel. They're not trying to take its land. They're not trying to set up an office in Tel Aviv. They're trying to kill every single person there. And they really don't care what happens to the land. So, that's a different, when you're thinking about fighting against them, you got to think about, they don't care about destroying, most, like when we were fighting World War II, we weren't really trying to destroy Europe. It happened as a consequence, right, of the fighting. But we were, that was not the aim. The aim was to defeat the militaries of, Germany, Italy, Japan. But this is wipe out every person there, right? Kill them all for religious hatred reasons. So it's a different approach.
Yeah, I don't know. Somewhere in my mind, I think this has been kind of interesting too, because I think I've always felt, or at least kind of been taught that you don't go and attack someone who's got nuclear capability. That's too risky and too dangerous. But Israel is showing, if you've got the intelligence and the capability, and you are very precise. What a way. I mean, they, like you said, they took out these very strategic people, and they've left the Iranian regime, without their top people, and so this and it's and really hurt their military capabilities. What is it? Is it the Iranian National Guard? I think the guy, he was I think he was quoted in the paper, and then the next day he was dead.
Yeah, that's right.
They knocked out or at least hit one of the top propaganda stations in Iran. So they were,
while they were on the air. They've gone off the air. They came back on the air, and all of a sudden they got bombed.
Yeah. So it's interesting what we've learned here. I mean, we've seen. I think we discussed before about some of the things that Ukraine has done with drones, and that. I will marvel for a long time at how they use the drones against Russia, getting the parts in there, building them.
Right. Yeah, they attacked the nuclear power.
Yeah. So they did it, and they were very precise. They knew what they were going after, and and they to try to neutralize a lot of things that were going on. And now you have Israel, and I'm just wondering whether or not I think we talked about it. I mean, drones have changed the face of modern warfare, but I also wonder whether or not that we've got ramped up intelligence in a lot of ways in some of these countries, where that in combination with the drones is just changing everything. Israel is a small country, and they're fighting bigger countries, and usually in general, and but I don't, and I don't know that they, once again, this is another example of Israel, probably would not have done this without the election of Donald Trump, right? I mean, I'm not sure that they would have gone. I think they needed more of a backing. I don't know that the Biden administration would have given them this level of backing.
No, there's no way they would have.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think
might have given Iran this level.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah. Exactly. So it's just, it seems like Netanyahu and Trump have had a better relationship than, say, Biden and Netanyahu,
right?
And so I think Netanyahu looks at this and says, okay, I know what we need to do. Uh, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to get the support of the U.S. or at least President Trump and the administration to go after this. So we've seen we've seen the attacks on Hamas and beating them back and taking out a lot of their leaders and leaving them trying to rebuild and kind of scattered, and lots of things going on there. Uh, and now we see this attack on Iran, which I guess a lot of people didn't see coming initially too. The focus has been on Israel Hamas, not on Israel Iran per se. But the other key part of this too was Syria, right? I mean, Israel can now use Syria and get
Right.
there, right?
That's
And
right.
under Assad, it wasn't possible,
Right.
but now it gives them a clearer path. And that's also another key part of all of this. Um, the Middle East,
It
yeah,
is
I mean
changing rapidly. I mean,
yeah,
6 months from now, it will look substantially different than it does now.
yeah. I mean, it's just you know, I obviously don't spend a lot of time thinking about the Middle East, but when I've always been impressed in general, in terms of how Israel was able to defend itself, and how they actually, fight back. They've between the IDF, their intelligence services, Mossad, some of the best military and intelligence services in the world exist in Israel, and I think that it's their survival. They're in a constant survival kind of state, and so they make sure that they are prepared to do a lot of things, and they have a long history. But what they've done here has really been interesting to see
Yeah.
going on the offensive like this and the effectiveness of what they've done.
Right. Well,
So
and,
yeah,
and they have the other thing is like uh, a lot of what they have done has been done because people in Iran helped them, right? So confidential sources helped them. So uh, they're able to find allies, which tells me that there are a lot of people in the Iranian government that realize it's time for change. So you see the oil markets. I guess the Iranians threatened yesterday they're going to close the Straits of Hormuz, through which about a third of the world's oil travels, right? And it's like, do you really believe that? Can they do that? I don't think they can do it. I don't think they can manage it anymore, right? We're moving an aircraft carrier into the region to see that they don't. So, and then I read somewhere like a Facebook argument or whatever, a guy saying, you don't defeat a country till you defeat its army, right? Because you can fly over and bomb stuff all day, but at some point you got to get down on the ground and defeat the actual army. Well, I'm not sure that that's really the case in Iran. I really think that like you're pretty close to decapitating the leadership of the military, the intelligence, and the government itself. So I mean, I think that we're really close to being able to solve the Iran problem. Now we can pearl clutch about how they went about it and whatnot, but you're not going to do it any other way unless you're on a massive. And you talk about endless. Like think about the last time Iran was in a ground war, right? They were in a ground war with Iraq for 16, 18 years or something like that. They're kid soldiers walking the mines so that if they get blown up, they're not that good of soldiers anyway yet at 13 or whatever. So I mean that's the level of fight they're willing to do. But I don't think that this is a quagmire situation. And I think, one way you can tell that is like price of oil is fairly stable, about $70, 70 to 73 or so per barrel right now. So, that's because I think the world sees that however this comes out, it's going to happen pretty quickly, and it's not going to be a slog. It's not going to be a Iran-Iraq war. Trump's problem is a lot of people who voted for him, they're like, we want no more wars. This is a war. And it's like, this is a chance to take the worst player on the world stage off the stage, right? If you're not for this one, when do you say we're never going to go to war? We're just going to let whatever happens happen. I don't think so. I don't think that's the way it works.
Yeah, I mean, I think Trump would prefer that Israel just kind of handle it as much as they can,
Right.
and avoid us intervening in this thing. But yeah, I mean, you have people like Tucker Carlson and whatnot. I mean, they're out there shouting about about this whole thing, and I guess Tucker and Ted Cruz had a big dust up,
Yeah.
and everything about it. Uh, but
Absurd. You got to go watch it. It's really absurd. Like Ted Cruz is trying to explain this to him literally like he's 5 years old, and he doesn't get it. He doesn't understand. He wants to. They're looking for a case to make against Israel, right? There's no case to be made against Israel. This is what it is.
Yeah, and it's not. This is not like Israel is trying to do any kind of nation building or anything. I mean, they're protecting their own, country, and they're just trying to take care of enemies that are a threat to them.
Right.
And then maybe even in the case of Iran, you know, as President Trump's like surrender, right?
Yeah.
It's like maybe we actually get freedom, something we haven't seen since the fall of the Shah. So this
Which
this
just
could
brings up another point. So what would happen if that happened, right? What if you could kill, capture, or bring about the surrender / resignation of Ali Khamenei, right? What if you could do that? What if they pulled that off? And as it seemed like in recent days that they've gotten pretty close. I guess Trump tweeted yesterday that they know exactly where he is, and he's fine for now, but we can go get him anytime we want. It was sort of a warning to the world. But so what happens? What is the next thing, right? And the Shah's son is organizing people to, put him in at least temporarily, which I think temporarily is the most anybody would go for on that one, given the history. But I do believe that's worth a look at this point. You
yeah,
gotta have somebody the world trusts to take over, right? Because
right.
they are sitting on a lot of weaponry and a lot of wealth.
Yeah, yeah, and that, as you said, going back to the price of oil, I mean, it initially spiked. It has been stable. I've seen my local area here the gas prices at the pump have spiked as well, but we haven't seen it go, sky high like other conflicts in the Middle East would have normally done that. There's still a fairly abundant supply, which has kind of kept the pressure down, and
Yeah.
just kind of put this at this new level. And once this is kind of stabilized or resolved, we'll probably see it go back down into the 60s, and then we'll go back to more of those sub $3 gas
Yeah.
prices, and maybe 250, 260, and things like that. So I think this is some temporary pain, but it could have
Could
I think
result in some really big long-term gain.
yeah, I think
Getting
there
these guys stopped is a game changer on the world stage in a
yeah.
lot of ways.
So President Trump left the G7 because with all these things going on. I don't know. The media always makes a big deal of this when he does that, but I was like, I don't know if that's a big deal when he leaves the G7 all that much at this point. I don't know.
Right. He let I was thinking, and then they I guess the Prime Minister of Canada made a point of giving the chair Trump was using to Zelensky, right? Because I guess he showed up because he's now G7 somehow. But what I thought is like that reminded me of like baseball. It's like Trump got called up to the majors, and Zelensky's the guy they put into AAA to take his place, right? That's a AAA meeting, right? It's past prime power of Europe, right? Power people of Europe. Macron, Maloney, Keir Starmer. I guess they made some kind of deal with the British before he left town. But are those major players on the world stage right now, and the things that are going on? I don't think so. I mean, they're the heads of countries. They're going to get asked their opinion of stuff, but we're not. No one's asking Europe or any faction thereof to weigh in on this, right? This is going to be done by the U.S., Israel, and the Iranians, and no one else.
And I mean, what are they accomplishing at these meetings? That's what I want to
Well,
know.
I guess they're talking about trade, integrating education stuff and whatnot. Soft power type of things that they can combine and do. And that's okay, right? If you got time on your hands, right? But we really don't right now. So that's kind of the thing. Is like this needs to be, that it faded from the head. Other than the obsession with, oh, Trump fell asleep, Trump did this, Trump did that. There's nothing really to cover. Like someone asked me the other yesterday, did the other leaders just go home, right? Once Trump left, like what was the point? And I'm like, well, I mean, no, they got stuff, they got an agenda. They'll sit there, but I mean, the fact of the business is the news moves on, right? And you're there. That's not the story anymore. G7 was the story, and it's not anymore.
Well, yeah, and the news moves so quickly that things like the G7 don't hold the attention very long anyway, unless there's something really earth-shattering, which is not highly likely anymore these days with these things. We have all these gatherings, and I just questioned, what is going on here, except for people to meet, greet, and wine and dine and spend a lot of time doing things.
Money, a lot of money flying into these things and all this stuff.
Yeah. So I'm
to discuss the environment.
Right. Well, so here's the thing. So I subscribe to a podcast that's run by the guy who runs the Norwegian Sovereign Fund or whatever it's called. Anyway, and so he's an interesting guy, Nikolai, whatever his name is, and Frantanian, whatever. And so he gets a chance because of his position, because he runs this fund, and they have positions in companies all over the world. So he's able to get interviews with just about anybody. And he turns it into about a 45-minute to an hour podcast just about every week. So this morning in my feed pops up the head of the World Economic Forum. So I listen to these things, and I haven't listened very much to this one yet. But one of the things he asked the head of the WF is that, so how many people are working there? He says, oh, probably about 1,000 people. And I'm like, okay, I realize it's a large thing. It's like 1,000 people in this event. Yeah. It's like how much money is being spent on this thing, and what is
and for what, and who's paying for it? And I mean, most of the people are there on some taxpayer's dime, right?
Yeah. So my thought goes, that needs to be doged.
Yeah, that needs to be doged.
It is just, it's just ridiculous.
And one thing we're learning is these gab fests are not productive.
Yeah,
right? That's not a good way to work through. We're all sitting here, so it's the least common denominator. What do we all agree on? Well, we all agree that the weather is hot in the summer, right? I mean, it's about as far as you can go. So it's like, it's just not. It's not a platform for making progress. It's a platform for just show, for performative.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain degree, some events, took it on the chin during the pandemic and never really recovered, and a lot of people don't miss those things, right?
That's right.
Even the tech people I listen to, one of the things with all the big tech companies, Apple and these guys, is that they had these huge, annual events, and Tim Cook or Steve Jobs in the past, they would trot out these people and they'd give these big speeches and whatnot. Now a lot of that stuff, I mean, they still can go, but there's a smaller number of people actually go in person. And they actually they're not too many of the top people are actually speaking there. A lot of it is video presentation. A lot of it you can watch streaming if you're the privileged class and can do that and stuff like that. And it's like, so, it's changed, probably made some of these things more efficient, and then exposes the ones that are still out there, where jets are flying in and all this kind of stuff, because we know that Davos is still one of the most hypocritical things there. They always talk about the environment, but how many private jets show up to Davos and stuff like that? But I will say this as a sideline, it's just like as I was listening to one of my tech podcasts, I'm getting very jealous of those people who go to the Worldwide Developers Conference at Cupertino at Apple, because apparently there is an Apple store or an Apple merchandise store, not like your computer stuff like that, but where it has like T-shirts and hats and stuff like that. And it's the only place you can get this merch. And
Oh, wow.
people will wait hours in line to buy Apple merch. And I'm like, man, yeah, it's like I'm the Apple fanboy. I would pay something to have an Apple logo or something or other. But you have to find a way to get into Cupertino to the campus in order to get there. And all that. Particularly, they still have a lot of people showing up to the WWDC, and so therefore, I don't know. I think they're spending $80 or $90 on a hoodie. I'm not sure I'd spend that much money on a hoodie, but maybe I could get away with a baseball cap or a T-shirt or something like that. I don't know. It makes me curious now. Now I'm just like, every time I see stuff like that, I'm like, I try to resist, but there's something in me that says I'm really curious about that. All right.
Speaking of that, I want to bring up one thing. So, you're not, the Bible says you're not supposed to covet, you're not supposed to be jealous, but I'm struggling with that because of the Don and Young bobblehead. It's a problem for me. I think there needs to be a Brian and Lori bobblehead.
I almost brought it onto the show. I was tempted.
That's really cool. I mean, and they did a pretty good job. They really on her. They really did a good job on her.
Well, so here's the thing. Actually, so Young and I discussed this. It's like, and our opinion is that thinking that they may have done a better job on me than on her. She wasn't sure that looked as much as her, but it's just like it was very Asian, right?
Yeah,
and stuff like that. And it's like I could say it's like I just married an Asian woman. I don't know. But yeah, when we had this whole thing going on Saturday night, and when they brought this thing out, I was like, you got to be kidding me, because you said not else on a covet and whatnot. The couple that gave it to her are what we call our church mission leaders, and they're heading home here at the end of the month after being here for 3 years. And over the last, I can't remember what it was, 5 or 6 months ago, several people got together, and I may have been for his birthday, her birthday, maybe his birthday. Anyway, they actually got some of the what they would call a senior mission. They contributed, and this one person basically ordered a bobblehead for that couple, which sits in their current home, which is going to go home with them to Omaha here shortly. And I just thought that is so cool, and everything like this. Now the mission president says that every time he walked by that, he just gave him the shivers for whatever reason. But he accepted it. He accepted it back at the time, I guess, very graciously. But I guess I haven't. But apparently, that person who got that bobblehead made, apparently they just decided at the same time, more or less, to make ours, and so they've been holding on to it for months, and until we got to this event. To do this, and I was just like, I couldn't believe, I was blown away by that. It's I mean, I sent that off. I made sure my family saw that, and
you gotta put it on the show next week.
I will bring it. Yeah, I sometimes I kind of lost track this morning. I got on here a little bit later than normal because I'm like, oh whoa, what time is it here? It's like I just kind of got carried away doing other things. All right. So now we also had some other things going on. Obviously, we had the big parade in DC, 250th birthday of the U.S. Army. I think that's great.
Yeah, really beautifully done. The best one I saw was somebody put out "Happy Birthday, Army" from your much younger, better looking cousins, the Marines.
Yeah, I think I saw something like that. Yeah, I mean. Look, I don't know if the $45 million figure is accurate in terms of what it cost.
I'd be surprised if that was not a little low. We went when I was in Congress. I wasn't a member. I worked in Congress. They took us on one of those Capitol Hill days to Quantico, and we watched a Harrier take off, and we watched them use weapon systems, and we got to shoot a few guns, and we got to eat MREs and all this kind of stuff. And that cost $50 million. And this was 2004, 2006, something like that. So, that was, I was eye popped when I realized, man, that's a lot of money just to, now that's a pretty good investment for them, like this is, right? Because you
Right.
show the country, in this case, you're showing congressional aides who go tell their bosses how to vote on legislation. This is what all they do, right? So that's a really good investment for them. And this was a great recruiting commercial for the Army, right? It looked, and like the left they didn't goose step, right? We were expecting what Russia and North Korea do, and we kind of marched sloppily, and we think it's because the soldiers didn't really want to be there, and it's like, that's a lot of insanity. But the fact is, we don't goose step, right? We do, our Army units do not, they have a way to march, but like absolute precision is not really the goal. Getting the 12 miles down the road is the goal, right? So, they march in a way that gets you there. So, the left just could not bear that this was going on and that people were proud to be Americans, right? It just ate them up. So, they blame it on, it's Trump's birthday and it's Trump's party, and look, Trump looks bored, and Hegseth is going to get fired, and look at those empty seats. The empty seats they kept showing, by the way, were where the press was supposed to sit, right? So the press was going to try to ignore this into not having happened, right? But there's like 200,000, 250,000 people down there watching it. Huge crowd, right? For one event, as opposed to the other people got, 3.5 million to thousands of events, right?
Yeah.
No Kings or whatever
Yeah.
it was.
So yeah, this whole, I mean, for us, I mean, whether or not it's 45 million or 65 million or whatever the final cost will be, I mean, right now it's a drop in the bucket with a $7 trillion budget at this point. So it's one more thing, on our in our budget and all this kind of stuff, and that we still. I wish we were still more fiscally prudent overall, but I don't have a problem with this because I don't, we don't give our military, our branches of the armed forces enough credit. We don't celebrate. I mean, when their birthdays come up, even, their markers at, 100, 200, whatever, 220, these things, is that, it's noted, maybe on social media or things like that, or on their web pages, but it's basically a blip, and it just moves on, and you don't, except maybe Fox News, which might, do something, in the morning or whatever, to recognize that, but it's usually not much of anything. And so this big show, yeah, it made the liberals lose their minds. But this is our armed forces. I mean, and that, I think that's a great morale booster overall, to say, the president wants you to come to DC and bring your toys and show the country what you can do. I've got a friend of mine who works for the National Park Service, and so obviously they're integral to, a lot of things that go on down there. And she posted a picture on her Facebook page the other day. She goes, "It's tank day," and so she's standing by these huge tanks, and I'm like, well, I'm jealous.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, we don't need to see that every day, but sometimes it's okay.
Yeah, it is.
It's a good thing.
Right. And then, then sliding into No Kings, which is kind of a head scratcher in a way. I mean, it's just kind of a goofy, dumb thing that the left has come up with. It, the liberals.
It's successful. We don't have a king.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think Trump said, Trump said something to the effect about, he's not a king because he has to do a hell of a lot to get things done. Right. I mean, you can't just decree and then have it done. He's still got to deal with the U.S. Constitution and Congress to actually get a lot of things done. He's limited in his powers to do things.
And he thanked them for. He said, "I heard a king was trying to take my place, and I appreciate the liberals taking care of it for me."
I was thinking what we should have done is each of us should have gone out and gotten a crown from Burger King to wear on the show today or something.
That's right. That's right.
But I don't know. I don't know about your friends, people that you actually know, and like, maybe even have relatives, I don't know, that are on social media. But I've noticed that with the No Kings thing, they've been my friends have been, some of my friends have been a little more vociferous on this. I decided I'm not going to be overly political on my Facebook page.
Yeah, I do that too.
Yeah,
Twitter's another story, but
Twitter's a
Facebook.
little bit different. Yeah, but the other one, but the thing is just that I'm getting to the point, and my wife has been, she's usually pretty good about this, which is that, if she doesn't like something somebody's saying, she just drops them as a friend on Facebook. And I haven't done that yet, but I'm getting to that point where I'm like, you know, you're lacking common sense with with a lot of the comments that you're making here on this. You're being swept up into a media frenzy about this, but you don't really know what's going on. There's a guy that used to be a member of our central committee, and he posted that he had VIP tickets to the event, and he rode the metro down, and he got into a conversation with someone who had some No Kings paraphernalia or whatever, and had a discussion with them. And he says the bottom line is that the guy really didn't know anything about why he was there except for what the media told him.
Yeah, common theme. Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is just, they all get swept up. They're thinking that all these things that Trump is doing is bad, and I mean, I've got people who are children of friends of mine who are pretty good, conservatives or at least Republicans, and their kids are now going like the other way. And I'm like, what happened here? It's the parents are just ready to pull their hair out, but they have definitely fallen into a trap with the media and with the left. But I don't know if you've seen that with anybody that you've got, rather than not a friend that you just are friends with, but a friend that somebody you actually know, whether or not you've gotten into any debates of any kind with people that you.
I've had a couple of people on the Israel, normally reliable allies who see it differently. So.
Yeah, I mean, and look, and we can agree to disagree. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I don't profess to say that everybody has to agree with me to be my friend, but if they start spouting lunacy and just idiot kind of things like this, I'm like, you're now testing my patience.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of patience, but you're really starting to test my patience. And it's not because I'm not the big MAGA guy or anything like that, so I can take a lot, and I'm more than willing to criticize Trump for things that he's done. But some of you people, I mean, there was something that was posted on somebody posted on Facebook, and some kind of left-wing conspiracy theory about trip light. And Leonard Leo's gotten into the news lately, at least the Wall Street Journal, because he was the beneficiary, through the guy who owned Trip Light. When he sold Trip Light, he gave Leonard Leo and his organization was $1.6 billion.
Wow.
Right. And so Leo's using that to do a lot of things, including trying to make conservative films and things like that. Right. So, but I'm reading this thing, and this guy basically kind of alluded to, he tried to say that Leonard Leo, owned Trip Light. He didn't say it per se, but he left out the real owner's name and how this actually flowed and what was really going on there, and then said that Trip Light was involved. It's not just a way, a suppressor, surge suppressor type of company and things like that, but they're also involved in elections, and there's evidence that elections were rigged for Trump. Some places were rigged for Trump because of their involvement. Things. It's like, look, I don't like it on the right, but this one's as bad, if not worse, because I'm like, whoa, it's like, where did this come from? You've got a lot of your facts wrong right at the get-go. So, but I saw friends of mine falling, right into that trap. The people who were anti-Trump, they were like, oh yeah, I knew this was happening. I knew this was going to, it's like, okay.
No, you did.
Yeah, I'm like, I almost commented, but I'm like, no, because why ruin a friendship? They're venting, they're unhappy. Let them be, whatever, and just move on. All right. As we continue to move on, so we've had these ICE raids, we had the big riots in LA, and that seems to have simmered down. But one of the things that Trump has done here recently was decide that farms and hotels, they weren't going to have these blanket raids on there. I kind of
rescinded that yesterday, I guess.
Yeah. So I don't know if they're going to think about any others. I mean, those are two big areas where there are going to be probably lots of illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, and stuff like that. But not everybody. Once again, not everybody who works in those industries is illegal. A lot of them did come. There are people who came through legally and have gotten legal papers, and they've done that. So and sometimes I think the ICE raids have been maybe a little bit too broad. They didn't do as good a job of checking their paperwork to go and round people up or whatever. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I'm glad that Trump is at least willing to take a pause and say let's take another look at this before we cripple.
Well, I think there's an effort to not to make sure that they're taking out the people they should be taking out and not anyone else. I think that they recognize there's a PR problem with that, and as well as a moral, ethical problem with that. So I think you're hearing less about citizens being taken out. No, the thing that's going on now, of course, Democrat politicians are trying to rush into these scenes and create havoc and get themselves arrested for publicity's sake, right? You had the mayor of Newark. You had Senator Padilla from California.
Who nobody knew was a senator anyway.
Yeah, and California's senator is basically a zero. And now you've had the comptroller of New York City. Yesterday was trying to do it. So it's just another way that they're trying. It's a coordinated thing. Go get arrested, right? And they're trying to make Trump overreact and turn the public opinion against the raids. It's not happening. Trump I think he's at 53% today on Rasmussen. He is I guess the last quarter they did not release a single person into the country. There was like only 1,700 encounters all along the border, and they're all turned back. So he closed the border. I mean, that's what he said he was going to do, and he did it. The border is pretty much closed. So you can't get drugs to the legal ports of entry anymore. The people who depended on exploiting our border weakness are panicking because Trump really did it. He really closed the border. So people look at that and they don't consider it. They don't consider the achievement that marks. Like we've been talking about this since Simpson-Mazzoli, right? 1986. And Trump's finally done it. Trump's finally achieved it. And I think they need to make a much bigger deal out of that. Because I mean, the American people, the choice was pretty stark. Harris wanted to buy them free sex change operations and free health care and free housing and all this stuff. And Trump's like, if you're illegal, we're taking you out. And the American people, I mean, that was pretty much, the American people, a lot of them decided how to vote based on that. And so what they want is the people taken out. So he should do it. You make it happen. Accomplish, check the boxes, accomplish the things you said you were going to do.
Yep, I agree with that. Okay, so try to quickly, as we get through some more things here before we close it off. So we've got the Senate, the Finance Committee released the one big beautiful bill, or the big beautiful bill, whatever you want to call it, with their changes. The Democrats can't really fight this in the Senate because of reconciliation.
Right.
So the House will get this. There's already talk about just about some of the things that the Senate has done had changed from the House bill. I mean, I don't have a problem. They took the salt tax back down, the salt cap back down to 10,000. I'm like, yeah, okay. I didn't like it going to 40. Like I said before, I was willing to let it go a little higher, maybe because it's been a few years, but it is kind of a sop to the blue states when you raise that cap. So I'm kind of.
I think that they need to negotiate. It'll get negotiated out, and it'll be a much lower number than 40.
Yeah. But I think what we're going to see is just a little bit of a tug of war about whether or not how much money is really being cut overall. Are we going to reduce spending, or are we keeping some things in there? Because I guess there's some things in there that are still kind of on the green energy from Biden program was still kind of in there, and things like this. So I don't know. I mean, I know there's general skepticism as to whether or not today's the 18th of June. Trump that he would like to have that, done, in 16 days. Maybe they can get it done. I don't know. You've been on the Hill. Maybe I don't. You would know whether or not that's a process that can happen.
Yeah,
That
they're running out of time because
yeah,
you get to the end of July, that's you basically the calendar moves forward about 5 to 6 weeks.
yeah,
Right, end of July, the last day of July, the following day after that is the middle of September.
yeah.
There's not much that goes on down there between that. So there is some pressure to start to get this stuff done. They're also they have the rescission package that the House passed last Thursday, where among other things, it cuts all the funding for PBS and NPR. The Senate, there's 3 or 4 Republican senators already saying that they won't vote for something with that in it. So it's always that kind of uphill fight. Susan Collins from Maine, Senator Collins, has proposed no funding for NPR and PBS corporate, but funding for individual stations. And I hate to say it, I could see the House trying to figure out a way to make that one work. But I mean, the thing needs to be done is, we should not be paying for media that partisan media, right? The views you don't agree with. That's tyranny. Thomas Jefferson even recognized that. So you have to, they need to finish the job here. They have a chance to do something to actually make a difference on this, and they need to do it.
Yeah, they need to figure this out and kind of get together on this. But I understand what from some of the recalcitrant Republicans in the House what they want, and I understand in the Senate it's difficult. Speaker Johnson, get another tough task of steering this through and trying to figure out how to get this done. Up to this point in time, he's managed fairly well.
He's been pretty magical. He was on the thing the other day, the vote the other day. There were 8 votes behind, and then all of a sudden, you see the guy running up to get into the well to say, the speaker pro tem to say, that's it, the vote's called, we win by 2. So I don't know what happened, how they got from -8 to +2, but it happened in 30 seconds. So he did something pretty voila, and here we are.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to kind of bring us down towards the end and get your thoughts about a couple of things here. So the Trump organization, or whatever we're calling it, they announced a $499 Trump phone that they want to come out with. I think they want to do it in a couple of months. They've been a little cagey in terms of like exactly where this is going to be made. I mean, they named a couple of states where they might have some things going on here, but we've discussed phones a little bit before and some of the sourcing and things like this. This is not an overnight task. It's an eye-popping thing. The specs on this thing are very similar to where these iPhones are today. It's like an iPhone cannot be made in America for that price. And where's the manufacturing that's already set up to run this? It's
there
not
are a couple of plants where they could do
yeah,
it.
it's good luck. I mean, it's not realistic, and I get a little bit kind of like how much more stuff does the Trump organization or company, whatever, they keep announcing that they had the meme coin. My general thing here is just that, and you can feel free obviously to disagree, is that they have decided that part of this, we're going to go all out. We took a hit during our first term. We're going to do whatever we can as an organization, as a company, and just capitalize on the fact that Dad is the president of the United States, and as long as it stays within the bounds of the law, we're going to say we're going to sell this, we're going to sell that, and doing that. I know it drives the liberals in the media crazy. It makes me sometimes I'm like question it a little bit, but
Obama had those stores all over the country, right? Obama stores. It just got
was that who was that being run by though?
Well, I mean, I don't know, but they were selling Obama merch, right? And so somebody was capitalized on it. I doubt they did it, and he didn't make a penny, especially considering how much wealthier he was when he came out of the White House than when he went in. Right? He made a lot of money whilst president, some which way. So, This is it's a thing that, like, Harry Truman didn't have this choice to make, right? Calvin Coolidge, he didn't have this choice to make. So good for them, they didn't make it, but it really wasn't offered to them. So sort of like, I cheat on my wife with a supermodel. Well, first of all, I got to find a supermodel who's willing to do it, right? So you know what I mean?
Thank you for that analogy.
I mean, so I think that's where we are on that.
Okay,
It's going to be a part of going forward. They're going to be, presidents are going to be merchandised and profited from. They just are.
All right, quick thoughts on so the House passed a couple of resolutions the other day. Basically they want to prohibit DC from allowing illegal aliens, non-citizens, to vote in the local elections.
Right.
They're prohibited from voting in federal elections, but local elections, we've seen a lot of this around the country. And the residency even was, I think in DC, the way it's written right now was that you only need to be here for 30 days even, which was really even more ridiculous. And then they had, and then there was this other thing about cooperating with the feds on immigration, on detainers and things like that. They'll need to get Senate approval to make this actually happen. And I don't know whether or not they will get Senate approval, whether or not there's enough no votes to stop this or not on this. But it's good to see them try to take up the fight a little bit and push back against some of this stuff. I mean, this is one area where the House can actually do something with regard to these kinds of things because of the unique nature of the District of Columbia.
Yeah, and people say Trump doesn't care about the people of DC. Trump's done more to help the people of DC than Biden ever thought about doing. Right? I mean, he's really tried to clean up the crime and tried to actually take the guns off the streets and actually follow the law. So, good luck to him. I think that the district, you can see in some of the things that have happened recently, that Mayor Bowser has read the tea leaves and, decided that not to run afoul of Trump, that like you should maintain your distance and try to stay out of the line of fire. So it's been interesting to see, because I believe that there was a point where home rule was under serious threat, and I don't think it is anymore. I think it's fine.
All right, and then finally we'll end on somewhat of a somber note here with the passing of Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. Once again, I guess it's kind of our youth a little bit. I mean, the Beach Boys, I did listen to a lot of their songs.
Oh, heck yeah, me too.
I don't know. I'm trying to think, I didn't start listening to any kind of music until I was about 15. So, I don't really know. I think the heyday of the Beach Boys was probably a little bit earlier than that, but their music is iconic.
It's timeless. Yeah.
Yeah, it is really
work today, just as they did then.
It is really timeless. So, but this is showing, as we get a little bit older, we're seeing some of these people pass on, some of the great geniuses.
That's right. And who else? There was another musician that went down too. Sly and the Family.
Stone. Yeah.
It was also really innovative and had a voice in music, changed music some.
He was he was a real character. I mean,
he was. Made funk popular.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.